Welcome, and thank you, Prevero. Very delighted to be speaking at your launch event in London. I'm Gary Simon. I'm the leader of the Modern Finance Forum on LinkedIn. I know there are a few people in the room whom I recognize and have met before. The group is now 46,000 strong and the 5th largest group for CFOs globally. So if you don't belong, do come onto LinkedIn and join the Modern Finance Forum. We live in an environment right now that is quite benign. Interest rates are low, stock markets are pretty high, house prices are high, and inflation is low. And yet, within this environment, strangely enough, companies are failing at a rate that is 30 times faster than it was 30 years ago. And in fact, if you look at what we call the topple rate, the tenure for large companies on the S&P 500, 75% of the companies that are there today won't be there in 15 years' time. So what's going on? Why is that? Let's just set aside, short-term economic things like Brexit and the elections in the US. Actually, I want to come out of Europe mainly because I want to escape the Eurovision Song Contest. So, do we really? I mean, how is Australia in the European? I don't understand it. That's my reason for coming out of Europe. At the same time as we've got this high failure rate, we're seeing huge changes in the technology landscape, and in particular, how prices are falling right across the board. So computing costs generally are falling, I'd hate to be in electronics, are falling 33% per annum. Storage costs, it's the same story. Bandwidth costs, and so on. So the consequence of that is that technology is no longer a barrier to competition. Anybody can afford good technology. And as was hinted in Alex's talk, a lot of the technology problems have gone away because we can buy big chunks of hardware and we can run almost anything in the CPM world that we weren't able to do about 10 years ago. So the basis of competition has actually changed. And what we're seeing is a lot of companies with technology-infused business models coming into the market. And of course, one of the issues is if you're in a benign market and you don't have much pricing power because inflation is very low, and you've cut costs to the bone because that's probably the only other thing that you can do, then if you want to make progress, if you want to grow your business, the only thing you can do really is innovate or use CPM tools to identify nuggets of growth, little areas of growth that were previously hidden within your enterprise. So innovation is becoming quite important. But what exactly is innovation, and how does innovation relate to the finance function? Is innovation all about something developed in a laboratory? Is it only small, nimble startups in California that can be innovative, or can mature businesses be innovative? Can finance professionals be innovative? Let's just explore some of those issues. There is no question that innovation in a laboratory is a great thing. If you look at the top-ranked companies by the number of patents that are lodged each year, those top 100 companies outperform their peers by about 83%. So it is a staggering percentage. If you're in high-tech pharmaceuticals or electronics or manufacturing, where you're developing lots of patents, that is one way of innovating and growing your business for sure. The sources of innovation are coming from some surprising routes these days. Take, for example, Starbucks and crowdsourcing innovation. There are lots of examples of crowdsourcing innovation now. So, for example, software houses are really asking their customers through communities, what would you like to see within the product? Lego have a special website for innovation as well. And I looked at that, and it's really quite surprising. You know, the best ideas for Lego's product development don't come from children who are 12, 13 years old who love Lego. Guess where it comes from? It's men in their 50s who are still playing with their Lego, who are coming up with the greatest ideas for Lego development. And actually, I looked at Starbucks. They've set up a separate site called My Starbucks Idea. If you've got an idle moment, go and have a look. It's fascinating. And Starbucks get all their ideas, product development ideas, from there. And there was one when I looked about a month ago, which said, actually, why do you give the same reward points to someone in the queue who's buying 1 cup of coffee, or me, who goes out and has to buy 6 cups of coffee for all the finance function? Why do they get the same rewards? And it's really interesting when you get your customers actually giving you a perspective and suggesting where you might innovate. We're all familiar with the Ubers of the world, and there are lots of examples of Californian startups, and they definitely have ideas and can execute as well. But remember, innovation in itself is not a strategy. 90% of the startups in California fail within a year. All right? So it's clear that innovation isn't on its own enough. Mature companies can also innovate, which comes as a bit of a surprise. This is from a company called Tokio Marine, a very, very big Japanese insurer. And they realized that people were generally renewing their insurance on an annual basis. That's the basis of their business, and indeed most insurers. And they realized actually there's a demand for people who want to insure on a daily basis. For example, you want to borrow my car, you're not insured, but you can get on an app and immediately book some insurance for the day. Have any of you heard of hole-in-one insurance? This was brilliant. I came across this by a complete accident. But in Japan, if you get a hole-in-one, it's really bad news, because you have to buy your whole family, everyone you work with, huge meals and entertainment. It costs you about $5,000. So Tokio Marine brought out hole-in-one insurance. It's an app. They know from the location code that you're going onto a golf course, and you can book hole-in-one insurance. So that's another example of innovation, but from a mature company. So you can see lots of different styles of innovation. But what about innovation on the inside of the business? Innovation within the finance department. Everything we've looked at so far is about innovation on the outside. What can the finance department do to innovate as well? Is replacing your CPM system, is that innovation? To me, it is most definitely innovation. But we struggle as finance professionals to persuade the rest of the C-suite that that is innovation. And what about linking that innovation on the inside of the business, the CPM, the ERP, with what's happening on the outside of the business? I often say, what is the point of having a wonderful website that allows you to order products in any color, size, shape, delivery pattern, rewards, giving the customer that individual choice, and then sending them the wrong goods, or getting the invoice wrong, or not able to return the goods sensibly? Or, more importantly, what's the point of collecting a load of information, social media analytics, web analytics? You know how your customers interact with your website. You know what their buying patterns are. But why doesn't that inform your pricing decisions, your product bundling decisions, your commission calculations, your rewards to your suppliers, your discount structures? And it is that linking, and I think Alex touched on it in his presentation, this notion of bringing all the data together in a data-driven organization to make decisions. And there is no question that bringing data together from the front end to the back end enables you to make decisions more quickly. One or two of you were at the launch of our research last week, where we looked at the modern finance function, and it's the biggest survey of its kind this year. It covered 762 finance professionals globally. And one of the results that came out of that research was that the companies that are able to make decisions most easily, most quickly, and most relevantly were the ones that had spent a lot of time and effort linking their front office systems to their back office systems. It is hugely important. So I would ask you the question, as CFOs and senior finance people, does the left hand know what the right hand is doing? Are you involved across that huge divide between the front office and the back office? Can you match front office productivity with what you're doing on the back office? So a lot of people fall down because their website can cope with millions of transactions, but their back office simply can't cope with it. And their analytics definitely can't cope with it. And is innovation just going to exist in a vacuum? Are you just going to say, well, our organization innovates with its customer-facing systems, but below the back office, it really doesn't matter? And I can assure you from the research we've done, it really does matter that the back office systems, and it's a shame it's called back office systems. It sounds like something you tuck away and ignore. But actually, there's a little bit of McKinsey research, which you can look up, which is called Finding Your Digital Sweet Spot. Just Google that, Finding Your Digital Sweet Spot, which shows that over 5 years, investing in your back office systems gives you a much, much higher return than investing in your front office systems. And one of the reasons is that people invest in front office systems in pockets, in isolated pockets, and never link it through to the financials at the back. So where does this leave the modern CFO? Well, our research suggests that the modern CFO is really in quite a difficult place at the moment. There is no question that all of us in the room want to be more strategic. We want to be better business partners. We want to be more involved in decision making. We certainly don't want to be tied down to transaction systems and just churning out information and spending most of our time manipulating information rather than creating value in the business. What we found is huge contradictions, because there are a load of people out there telling CFOs what they should be. So you can go every day and see a report by my old firm Deloitte or Ernst & Young or IFAC or McKinsey or even Oracle telling CFOs what they should be. What we found out is CFOs want to do a lot of things, but they're not there yet. For example, 81% said they want to be more influential in decision making, but 1/3 of CFOs rely on gut feel. A similar number said they want to be responsible for corporate data, but 2/3 are struggling with the variety and volume of business data. 3/4 say they want to have a role in innovation. I'm sure you have, in your businesses, got lots of great ideas, but 2/3 say we haven't got time. We simply don't have time to get involved in that. 72% of CFOs say they will be responsible for technology. At the moment, it's about 50%. So that in itself is quite interesting. But a third say, they can't handle the technology that's there. They can't manage the technology, make best use of it. And then finally, more than 3/4 say the finance function of the future will have fewer but more highly skilled professionals in there. But at the same time, 52% are feel threatened by automation and de-skilling of the accounting function. One thing that comes clearly through is that we have to give technology a higher profile. Obviously, I'm biased because I've spent the last 35 years since qualifying as an accountant in technology. And I've seen the very slow progress. But we've really come to a point where there are no excuses anymore for not using abundant, really good technology that is out there. The problem is most CFOs rank process standardization and automation and linking front to back office systems very low. It's not in their top 3 priorities. It certainly wasn't in our research. And when they talk about technology, they focus on the wrong thing. They focus on automation. And I think even Alex said earlier, automation. The key thing, the thing that drives performance, that actually has the biggest impact on an organization, is process standardization. That is the first thing to do. Standardize your processes, then move on to automation, then move on to linking front to back office systems. There are big questions about data, the growing volume of it. Let's face it, data is doubling every 2 years. And it's not the volume that is the problem. It is the variety of the data sets. It's all this different data that's coming in, either for regulatory reasons or for business reasons, that makes it difficult to handle. And how do you deal with that data? So there's a big raging debate going on, certainly in the Modern Finance Forum, about whether we need to employ data scientists. I mean, I came through accounting where basically as long as you were numerate and you had an O-level in maths, that was about the maths that you needed. I don't regard myself as a great mathematician. But nowadays, we've moved well beyond the situation of good level of statistics. We're now into data science in order to unearth patterns. Someone said to me, who was a data scientist in America, we brought to our conference last year, he said accountants are very good at introducing bias into numbers. We establish set patterns. We say this is our chart of accounts and we must analyze everything to that chart of accounts without rethinking, is that the correct way to analyze the data we've got? What other patterns exist? So there's a big debate about what sort of person does the accounting function need to recruit around data? Do they need to be accountants at all? And if they're not accountants, these analytical people, do they sit within the finance function, or are they going to sit in another function? Now, a lot of CFOs are very complacent. They say, oh, no, we're the ones who understand the business. Data naturally fits with us, and that's what comes through the research. I actually don't believe it. I think you can take any bright graduate, give them data, immerse them in the business, and they can understand the business as well, and they can interpret the data. And I think that the finance function of the future is going to face competition from other areas of the business, particularly marketing, that spends a massive amount of money on data. And in those areas, you're going to see people, and they understand the strategy of the business. In those areas, you're going to see people who are not accountants taking over responsibility for data analytics, which is why this broader platform and involving cross-functional participation in performance management is becoming so important. There are questions about innovation. Do you build or do you buy innovation within the business? How do you create a culture of innovation? How do you create innovation within the finance function? Do you make, is there a budget line? Is there a line that says, here's a certain amount of money that we're going to dedicate to innovation? Some companies are doing it. I mean, I visited a company in New York where they had a buddying system where they said to their employees, at the end of the day, you can go and use all the equipment in the company, you can use all the resources of the company to go and develop your own things. They did it wisely because they knew that some of that innovation would come back to the company. Some of those guys may go, or girls may go off and leave the company, and they may come back with even better ideas. But how do you create that innovative culture? Do you punish people who make mistakes, who try something and don't actually succeed? Or do you say to them, well, you took a measured risk, let's give it a go a slightly different way? Does your organization have that sort of culture that encourages innovation rather than punishes innovation? And in some organizations, they've counted the cost of not allowing people to admit to mistakes. NASA is a very good example, where we all know they had some dreadful accidents, and when they unpicked it all, they found actually they knew, they had the knowledge, they knew what was going to happen, but because of their culture, they didn't allow an engineer to stand up and say, actually, there's something wrong here. I know we've invested $5 billion in that bit of the machine, but it's wrong, it's not working. And what does it mean for the skills in the finance function? We talk about being a data-driven organization, but we've got to be great business partners as well. We've got to be able to take that knowledge out to the other business functions and persuade them and influence them to improve their performance as well. But quite often, those skills don't exist within the finance department. We tend, and have done in the past, to recruit technical people who are technically excellent, technical accountants. Now, some of them will be natural communicators as well, but a lot of them won't be. So we've got to make a conscious effort to change our recruitment processes so that we draw in people not necessarily from our industry. If I want someone who's a good business partner, I would probably recruit someone from retail or retail banking, someone who's got an empathy with customers or has grown up in a culture with an empathy with customers. And what does it mean about new skill sets? We've talked about data science. We've talked about the softer skills of the CFO, which are going to become much, much more important if we're going to carry all the messages from all this data we're analysing into the business and reaping the rewards of that analysis. So we've covered a lot of ground. We've said that innovation is important, but the challenge is really carrying this through to decision making and having the right skills as well, and making sure that whatever we're doing on the front end of the business is linked to the back end of the business. If you haven't got the right people and you haven't joined up the organization, if you haven't standardized your processes, then automated, you're actually consigning yourselves to becoming irrelevant in the future. The finance function of the future is the one that grasps those challenges. Thank you very much.